teachers, what's the weirdest note you've seen being passed around? My friend passed me a note in 7th grade that got intercepted by a sub. It said your dad gave birth to you. She laughed and gave it back. Some may consider it an act of violating privacy, but I found a note left on the floor of my classroom during my first year of teaching that was being passed back and forth between two girls. One, whom I knew to be gay, was telling her friend she'd been self-harming because of other kids. I wasn't particularly close to this girl yet, but I confronted her about it. I kept her after school one day, had a little heart-to-heart with her, and let her expel all of her anger and emotion. She yelled, cussed, cried. I let her break an entire box of pencils, and I had the counselor sit in the hallway to listen in. He was able to provide some help in the following days as well. She stayed home for a day or two, but when she came back she brought me a script. I teach theater of a play she loves as a gift. I don't miss many kids that leave, but I still think about and miss her every single day. I hope she's doing well. First year teaching, high school. I was staying after to help a couple students in tutorials. While sitting at the table with them, I saw a folded up piece of paper on the ground. Jokingly, I picked it up and said, well, let's see what they're saying about me. It wasn't about me. It was we'd folded up in paper. Confronted the student that I thought it belonged to 2 years later, and it was his. Apparently an app walked into my room during his class period, and he tossed it into a corner not to get caught. I wonder if a teacher has ever pranked the students by silently reading the note, acting surprised, and looking at the involved students back and forth, and say, oh wow, never would have guessed, but this is way too private to read out loud, and then tear up the note. A few years ago some of my students were passing one around while I was teaching, so I picked it up. The note said Sean's time is the best teacher. I had to laugh, and one of them said they were bored, so they wanted to pass a note around and see how long it would take before I noticed. So apparently, I'm not the best teacher if they were bored enough to pass around a note. I kept the note until recently. It was tossed out over the summer by a custodian. I worked as a TA this semester for a psychology course and I saw 2 students passing an index card around. The professor saw it as well and opted to confront the students after class rather than during the lecture. I guess for whatever reason she forgot to actually do that because they left without any sort of confrontation from her. However, they did unknowingly and kind of carelessly leave the index card on their desk. So when she found it, she picked it up and read it. One student asked, what are you doing over spring break, fam? And the other replied below that message with intimacy. Lots of it. And it left the professor feeling awkward. I was the culprit. I was in 5th grade in 1967. And that year there was a TV show called Dream Girl of 67, essentially a beauty pageant. I decided to run my own competition called Dream Boy 67, and I printed some paper ballots that girls could use to vote for the cutest boy in our class. A couple of girls dropped their ballots on the floor. Unfortunately, our teacher was one of the strictest, meanest old ladies I ever had the misfortune to encounter. A glance from her could make your blood run cold. We were taking a test when she went over and picked up one of the ballots, all of which had my name on them, and walked over to my desk, where she stared at me with venom shooting out of her eyes. She said, now, I'm tired of this. I have been picking these up all day. This is going to stop now. She also added some words about the contest being unseemly for little girls. I froze in terror and came close to bursting into tears, but managed to hold it together. I never did anything like that again. I'm not a teacher, but my best friend had a huge crush on a girl in my class. Me and my friend are both girls. She was really nervous to ask her out, so I wrote on a piece of paper. It was one of those will you got out with me with the yes or no check boxes. I passed it over to her to give it to the girl she liked, but then she kinda wimped out and passed it back to me. Our teacher saw it and asked from the note. Someone on the other side of the room was like they are passing love notes at her. Then our teacher saw it as he was throwing it away and started laughing. It was super embarrassing, and now everyone thinks I like my best friend. In high school math I passed a note back to my least favorite bully. Without opening it, he called the teacher over, ratted me out, and handed him the note. Our teacher opened and read the note aloud. "Have a nice day." He then mocked the bully for being offended by such a nice message, while the entire class laughed at him. I got punched for it later, but it was worth it. Not a teacher, a student whose note was read out. It wasn't too bad. It was just weird cause it was about the class. I wrote that I was so done with the teacher repeating herself, and she got mad and tried to quiz me to see if I had understood everything. I think she wanted to humiliate me. Thing is, she was a substitute teacher. She didn't know that I'm top of my class and really do understand things the first time they are explained. So she quizzed me, and I answered everything correctly, which made the whole class laugh. Similar story, not a sub though. My junior year of HS I had chemistry right after lunch and the teacher was old and burnt out I think, and extremely monotone like almost Bernstein level. So, combine being a sleepy puberty ridden teen, having just ate, and a really boring lecture, and you get me falling asleep in class almost every day, sometimes loudly snoring. This understandably pissed the teacher off, and he would occasionally try to embarrass me by waking me up and asking me to go to the board and write a formula or balance an equation or something. What he didn't know was, by unlucky coincidence for me, I didn't have any close friends who also had that same lunch period. It was a huge school and overcrowded. They had to have 3 lunches, and so I sat with some people I was mad about and would often just do my homework, so I didn't have to actually do it at home. And I was pretty smart, so I often went a chapter ahead too. All this combined to make my peers and that teacher think I was some kinda sleepy Good Will Hunting, as I would get to class, fall asleep within 5 minutes, be loudly snoring in deep sleep, get woken up and smugly asked to solve the problem, then get it right every time, and usually faster than anyone else too. This happened about 5 times, until the teacher gave up and just let me sleep. Got an A. Living in a country where English is typically the first foreign language being taught. In the later stages of school we were allowed to use single language dictionaries, but of course no notes or anything in there. We just had gotten a new teacher who was A, not very good at teaching, and B, something that rhymes with which. So a lot of us switched out of those courses, me included. A friend of mine in the last test, before we could switch, did place a sheet of paper in his dictionary, which saw it, took it in a theatrical gesture, triumphantly proclaimed the friend would be disqualified before unfolding the paper. Paper just contained one word: bummer. Legendary. I saw my students all passing around a folded up piece of paper and all scribbling in it. I intercepted it and read that they were all writing a thank you message and signing an improvised Christmas card for me. I let that one keep on being passed around and brought them all individualized Christmas cards and biscuits for the very next lesson. Call me Alpha Wolf Boy. It was a note filled with graphic details where he and his friend both turning into dogs and being intimate. I was just another student in the class that found the note. I believe it was 100% serious, given the kid telling anyone that would listen that bestiality shouldn't be a crime because the dog likes it. Obligatory, not a teacher, but when I was in high school, 2 male teachers were sending some of the girls with notes to each other's classrooms on separate floors. Eventually, one of the girls got curious as to what they were discussing and opened up the note to find the comment check out the, but on this one, they were showing off the cute girls in their classes to each other and talking about their boobs and butts in the notes. As far as I know, they were never fired over it, so I can only assume it was kept pretty hush hush point. But they never did pass notes like that between classes again. The one teacher always creeped out the girls, doing the classic assign the cute girls to the front and doing this thing where he'd put his one leg up on a chair next to the desks while helping out the girls and leaning in with his crotch kind of hovering over them. True story. A girl passed a note to another girl. I confiscated it and later read it, not out loud, and was creeped out to find that the note was actually directed at me and the girl was confessing she had a crush on me. I thought it could be a prank, but you never know. It could have been genuine. I chose to just completely ignore the incident and pretended it never happened. Never discussed it with the girl and I burned the note. Don't want any life-destroying drama.